Historic agreement for the first time ever in its nearly decade-old history. Major League Rugby has a CBA. Let's talk about it. On this week's episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show, we break down everything that we know about the collective bargaining agreement between Major League Rugby and the US Rugby Players Association. We also talk about some of the reveals of a couple teams heading into MLR 2026, some new signings, plus much more. The Fantasy Ruckers Show starts right now.
Where rugby and the world of fantasy sports collide. Welcome to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, talking all things rugby from the MLR to leagues around the world. We're on top of it. Headphones on, pads off. This is the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, and Devin Vanderpool.
What's up, everybody? This is episode 179 of the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Thank you so much for Fantasy Ruckers League members, our community members, and everyone else tagging along on this journey of making fantasy rugby a reality in MLR with you each and every single week as we continue to count down the weeks to the start of MLR 2026. With me is Matt Yee. I am Ryan Yee, and Matt, we have a busy episode in this one. I said it at the top of the show in our teaser. You may have heard something big, something even historic that has happened in Major League Rugby.
Okay. Please share more. I already know what it is, but I want you to tell me, Ryan.
Yeah, well, hey, I think those listening have probably also heard it as well, and that is Major League Rugby for the first time ever has a collective bargaining agreement. Pretty big step in terms of making a push to become an established professional sports league here in North America. So that's what this episode is going to be in large part about. We're going to break down everything that we know about this collective bargaining agreement. Of course, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that happened over the course of the last week or so. So again, a jam-packed episode that we are going to get to it all. But Maddie, you're in a little bit of a different setting. It seems like you've maybe gone a little bit more settled out there on the West Coast.
Little settled, got some furniture to sit on, so I don't have to sit against a wall on the floor on my bed. So, yeah, we're figuring things out here. So it should be good. Things are looking good. Things are looking good so far. Things are only moving up and to the right here in terms of what we got. I got a chair. I feel pretty cool.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I can't complain about that. The setup out west is getting all started up. Any chance that you've come across maybe some more California Legion news that we maybe can talk about here?
Boy, they added one more guy, so they're that much. They can field the full squad. That's what they can do. They can field a
There you
full
go.
squad
There.
of 15 guys, not 23. Don't get ahead of yourself there. While all these other teams are clearly announcing their full roster, figuring it all out, California Legion is just on West Coast time, and they just don't care.
Yeah. Well, hey, they do have, like you mentioned, Matt, a couple more that we needed to talk about this one. So they're inching closer. They are trailing behind again against
Everybody.
a handful of teams here, particularly half. One that obviously has been sitting pretty for quite a while.
But
Two
you're going to
more.
start off with the whole all the teams are over 30
No, no,
except
not starting off.
Seattle,
That irritated you last
California.
time, Maddie. That irritated you last episode. We
I'm
we
just saying,
start off
I just thought you were lying. I just thought you were lying to the people. You lied
we
to the
started
people.
off on a grumpy foot. I'm not going to do that to you this episode. We're all
Mm.
happy here. We're getting rosters. We got a CBA. I mean, what could be better here? And we're gonna talk about it all on this episode. And again, just so much to come here in over the coming weeks in terms of getting into the fantasy numbers here. Obviously, we're talking about and have historically been talking about Maddie, at least over the course of the past few months about kind of signings and maybe a little bit of fantasy impact there. But obviously, with everything else going on, with the leaving of teams, with the changing of leadership and all this, I feel like the discussion has maybe strayed away a little bit from fantasy and with some of these teams being announced here, we got to bring that back. And again, like I said, over the course of the couple of weeks, we got to get into our top five rankings that we love to do each and every year. As again, that we are a little over a month away from the start of the 2026 year. So again, lots of fantasy stuff coming. If you haven't been following us this offseason, have had some pretty fun interviews that you can catch up on. The most recent one a couple weeks ago being Will Hooley. Obviously, he's been a big part of the growth of MLR, transitioning from that player role, that established USA Eagle, and a guy that played in the MLR to now being a familiar voice of Major League Rugby. So go check out episode 177 with the conversation with him. But again, no shortage of friends of the show joining all off season long. If this is the first time you hopping in here and listening, check that all out. We do appreciate it again. And you'll be first to know when new stuff does come out when you like, subscribe at the Fantasy Ruckers on all your social media platforms. We have a Discord channel. You can check that link down below. All that good stuff. Interact, comment. We'd love to chat with you guys, especially with MLR just around the corner. All right, Maddie, let's get into all of it here. Signings, team announcements, CBA. Got a busy news dump here.
News dump.
All right, TFR episode 179 news dump. And Maddie, we kind of alluded to it at the top in terms of a large part of this episode going to be talking about this collective bargaining agreement. So let's get some of the roster stuff out of the way here. And I guess there's no other way to start it off is that joining Anthem Rugby Carolina, who I will give them credit, was the first to make an announcement of their official squad heading into
Love that.
2026. Two teams over the course of the past week have followed their footsteps, and now we have 50% of the official league that we know will be playing, at least dressing up here for the start of MLR 2026. So I'm talking about the Chicago Hounds announcing their 2026 roster and also joining them as recently as earlier this week. Again, Old Glory DC releasing their full MLR 2026 roster. So, Maddie, I'll leave the decision up to you as we hop into this. Which team would you like to take a look at first?
I mean, let's start with the Hounds.
All right.
I
So
like
just
it.
to give a over recap, Maddie, before you kind of give your thoughts on this team has essentially been out. We've been have had our player tracker in our database following the signings over the course of the off season, and this has been all but confirmed in terms of their final roster. This is just the first time that they have announced that, hey, this is the 33 players that we will be including in a Chicago Hounds jersey this season. So, with that being said, Maddie, where do you want us to start picking at this first? I feel like we've talked a lot about the signings, but just an overarching thought on now the official 33 that will lead the way here for Chicago.
Yeah, look, I think out of all these, which is kind of weird, but I got to say, out of all these, my favorite signing has to be Jake Turnbull. I think we've had a chance to chat with him. We've seen him fantasy wise. And I think in terms of front rowers, he is by far usually one of the highest scoring props, non hooker front rowers that we see. And he's usually one of the few props now that Cameron Orr has retired. One of the probably the only prop that's actually going to be incredibly fantasy relevant in the top 10 of front rowers. So to me, I love that. I only see his value shooting up being part of the Chicago Hounds. The other one that I like to see is that I think, Jason Tidwell is going to have an opportunity here. Brock Webster is going to have a real opportunity here. And we'll see how Reese Botha kind of plays into this. But I like the signings here. I like the team. They're really well rounded. You look at it, and there's a lot of vets in here, just guys that are seasoned MLR vets. That even from a fantasy perspective, like I kind of look at that second row, and I'm like, every one of those guys were somewhat fantasy relevant for this for on different teams, and I only come to the same one. Nathan Den Hout should be at the top of everybody's board in terms of second rowers because he's going to absolutely kill it.
Yeah, and we'll get into the nitty gritty. I think there will be a handful of these guys that appear in our rankings here in the coming weeks when it comes to fantasy specifics and breaking down what these guys will bring to the table when it comes to a fantasy impact and whether this new change of scenery here in Chicago is going to positively or negatively impact that prospect that we think from a fantasy sense they will have here in 2026. But yeah, you nailed it on the head, Matt. It just a lot of really familiar names, right?
Yeah,
Like we have guys on this team that we are personally familiar with who have been, again, friends of the show and have hopped on here to guys that we have been familiar with because just from a fantasy sense, they have been killers year
yeah,
in and year out, right? So, you have guys like Tavit Lopetti, who was, I think it was the first signing of this offseason, right? And the first
yeah.
kind of wave heading into this reshuffling of going from 11 to 6 teams now. And you throw in, other guys that have found that same situation, Santiago Videla, you mentioned him, Jake Turnbull,
I
Maddie,
think
guys that are going to be
Vibes.
fun to watch.
I was just going to say one thing that we can't gloss over is the fact that they've announced their roster without the likes of Dylan Fawcett.
Hmm.
I think it probably shines a light on why Theo Furey was signed to this squad and why they needed a class hooker. Um, I think he seems like the starter for the start of the year at least. But we know at the hooker position, I think he's going to get majority of the playing time, and that should bode well for anybody who decides to take a chance on Theo Furey.
Yeah. And I honestly, I would be comfortable in saying for at least myself, in terms of you combine the upside of what we think Chicago is going to do this year, and obviously Theo Furry's background, like front row one or two, right? Like
Yeah.
early in the season, just to allude to it, not to give anything too away, but I'm pretty confident to say that you're going to see this guy in our top five for fantasy impact as well. So just something again that provides us a little bit of clarity in terms of what to expect and how we're
You
supposed to
know,
sort these guys out from a fantasy sense.
it's kind of interesting. You look at around the league and you think about the top five hookers that we've had over the past years, right? Like you think about who's been in there. We got Q, we got, you know, Shiloh Klein, Liam Coltman, Dylan Fawcett, Cameron Orr, Hugh Roach. None of them announced to be returning. Peter Anesu, not returning. Andrew Quattrin, not returning. Facundo Gaddis, not returning. Akise Oli, not returning. The next
Hmm.
one, the next front row that's there is Connor Robinson.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think for me, as I look at some of these names, a lot of these guys are going to get new opportunities. We're going to be seeing a whole new list of front rowers that are going to become
yeah.
fantasy relevant. And I think it'll be interesting to see who it is. Like to your point, right? That my kind of point was like Theo Furey could be the top front rower taken out of the draft, just simply because you look across the league and we've lost a lot of that historical talent that we've had on the fantasy side of things.
And where this squad then provides some maybe fuzziness in terms of answering maybe some cues before we move on to Old Glory DC is just what's happening at the fullback and fly half position. Like I understand, I think we all know
Hey,
that
it's a good
Christopher
problem to have.
Hilsenbeck, it's a great problem to have when it comes to actual teams. For fantasy sense, maybe not so much helpful, but I think we can all put our money on it. And Matt, you would agree that Chris Hilsenbeck is obviously going to be the starting 10 for the Chicago team, right? But you have a deep, deep fullback line here with Santiago Videla, Brock Webster, with the combination that we've seen Videla play 10 as
Yeah.
well. And then you throw in Reese Both into the mix, who obviously we've seen with Nola has been starting caliber. I mean, this Hounds fly half fullback room is deep. It has a lot of talent there. We not gonna know for certain who's gonna start where each and every single week or who is going to get the most starts. The guy that I'm probably most confident in is Christopher Helsenbeck. But that being said, though, I think from the maybe assurances and the confidence you're going to have and maybe Theo Furry this season might be the complete opposite for the fly half fullback position. We might be looking at the end of this where we're like, oh yeah, it was Chris Hilson back all day long. But then again, like you look it back, like, is it going to be Brock Webster? Is it going to be Santiago Videla? Both of them have been electric in the MLR. And from a Chicago sense, they're pumped about that because they have two weapons that they're going to be able to use on the back end there. But from a fantasy sense, your confidence, I think, wavers a little bit here seeing this lineup and now knowing the depth that it has.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the new norm when we look at a
Hmm.
lot of these teams. I mean, I feel like every team we've talked about, we've had this conversation of what do we do in the back three? What do we do in the back three? There's so much depth. There's so much depth, and every team has a solid back three room. And I think that's just the nature of less teams and the same talent pool of
Yeah,
talent being available.
fair
So,
enough.
I think our standard just has to go up as fantasy managers, and um, we should look at guys a little bit more crucially, right? Like a Peyton Wall, yes, in an 8-team league, like an 8-team actual MLR league, not a
Yeah,
fantasy
yeah,
league,
yeah,
is something that is, hey, he's a starter on the Chicago Island team. But you look at it now, rookie of the year, based on recency bias, rookie of the year is probably coming off the bench,
yeah.
right? Like, so yeah, I just think it's going to be the nature as we go through each team and as we go through Old Glory DC as a fantasy manager, you're going to be looking at this and you have to kind of take a different scope, a different step, and a different view of it to really kind of have a new standard of what's a starter in this league and who and what should be a top guy versus a guy who you're unsure about.
Yeah, and I will say in a fantasy format and a fantasy sport that already has a whole lot of volatility, this
Mm.
definitely throws a little bit more volatility in that because to your point, Matt, yes, some guys from an actual team sense may find themselves on the bench, where they would have been starting in a bigger league. That being said, from fantasy sense, right? Like we are still looking for guys that are going to score points, and now you're just going to be fumbling maybe a little bit heading into Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and waiting for those starting lineups to make sure that you have the right guys that will be playing because there is going to be those offbeat chance. Whoever is the odd man out in this backline room, is going to be rostered because the upside is too high, right? Like the upside is too great to have Peyton Wall in free agency. But by the end of the year, that may be the new meta in terms of, again, Maddie raising that bar in terms of the talent that we expect to be that bar for a rosterable player here in 2026 because we are only playing with 6 teams. That conversation can continue to be had when we look at now the Old Glory DC team, right?
Well,
You look at how each of these teams have announced their squads, and thankfully for this one,
Ryan, this
they
is
have split up the fly halves and the fullbacks. However, the front row position, you're now playing a little bit in terms of maybe not that clarity in terms of who's going to be that hooker for you. I think there's going to be that obviously knowledge in terms of what guys are going to be that as of right now in terms of our
hey,
tracker. Kirby Myhill and
recent
Connor Robinson are going to
based
be
on
those
last
guys.
year. Connor
Hmm.
Robinson is our new front row one. Just want to put that out there. And he was on an anthem team at the time. And now he's on a slightly better, a little more average Old Glory DC team.
Hmm.
So I think Connor Robinson's honestly an interesting look when we look at that front row room. I was actually going to say that this is the one team where the back three, that's actually, you don't have to worry about it too much as a fantasy manager. Like,
Yeah.
Damian Hoyland's going to be in there. Perry Humphreys is going to be here. And I don't know, pick your poison, I guess, for the last one. I actually think Jordan Jackson Hope is probably, that's an interesting one. I
Yeah.
really
Well,
love
let's
that. I
start.
really,
Let's
yeah,
start.
yeah.
Let's
Go
start
ahead.
there, Maddie, because that's again, we talked about how Chicago has been all but announced here over since they released that announcement last week. Old Glory DC rounds that out with a Jordan Jackson Hope announcement, and then now as at the start of this week announced their full roster with obviously Jordan Jackson Hope on it. Jackson Hope is a guy that we've seen has been very fantasy relevant. And Maddie, you I remember were very, very high on him in terms of
Well, I was
the
mad because he was
fantasy.
taking points away from my boy JP Duplessis.
That is right. That is right. And then obviously it was the injury season last year that caused him to miss that. But back in 2024, I mean, this guy went through a stretch in rounds 16, 17, and 18 in 2024, scoring at least 13.8 fantasy points. So I mean,
Yeah.
he has scored as high as 26.3. Meter eater guy has that try scoring ability, having scored 5 tries there in 2024, and the last time that we saw him. In playing MLR action. Jordan Jackson Hope is a great, I think, great grab for a team in Old Glory DC that we've always, I think, have had questions surrounding the center position, and maybe the explosiveness that they've had that, right? We remember Nick Grigg, right? Right. Was Nick Grigg? No, who is the
Yes,
guy that
sir.
Nick Grigg? Um,
Nick Grigg was on
and
Old DC, then he went to Miami.
that's right. That's right. And in terms of that. So again, you talk about we made fun about how Old Glory
Did he?
DC
Yeah.
it was, right?
Yeah, I think so. We're fact checking day today. We're fact
Yeah.
checking ourselves constantly. This is the integrity. This is called journalism.
Yes, yes. Nick Grigg, yes, yeah. Over DC. That's right. That's right.
That's what I
Miami
thought.
Sharks,
Anyways,
and then
right. I just like I love this signing. I think he's incredibly versatile. He can play in the back three. He can play in the centers. We've seen him do both. Um, I love it. I'm a big fan of it. I thought in my head, I was like, oh, Old Glory DC just wants to continue to be fourth place. They want to continue to be fifth place, But now it looks like they want to be third, right? Maybe fourth, or
your
maybe
cynicism
be
is
a little
crazy,
bit
man.
better than average. I just, but Ryan, look at this team, and you tell me, you compare it to the Seattle Seawolves, you compare it to the Chicago Hounds. You honestly, yeah, like just tell, like you look at the team, and do you see there's in my mind, a clear line between what the Seattle Seawolves have versus what Old Glory DC has decided to make roster moves wise in the offseason.
Sure, but I also think there's something to be said about that consistency and supplemented with some
Sure, yeah,
other
yeah,
players.
go. Yeah, you lost me
Nope,
there.
you back? You back?
Yeah, yeah, I'm back
Okay.
now.
All right, hold on. Let's test the response. I say one.
Two.
Okay, cool. That was good. All right. I'll just get into there's something to be said. Um,
Yeah,
That's true, Maddie, but hey, there is something to be said, I think, about the consistency, right? And I mean, you're supplementing that with players who are, I think, marquee names, right? So, like, you have guys that you trust can be successful, right? You have your Jason Robertsons, you have
sure,
your Rob Harleys, right? You have
sure.
Cali Martinez's, you have guys that you've been riding with, Connor Buckley, right? But then when you throw what makes this difference, and I get it, right? I have seen this, I've been firsthand on this. I was part of, the Old Glory DC podcast team for quite a little bit there in terms of just the familiar names we saw in and year out. And yeah, while other teams were doing other splashy things, Old Glory DC never seemed to kind of jump into that. But I think this year there is a little bit of a different sense because on top of all those guys that I mentioned, you got Connor Robinson, explosive front row player that's going to step right into that hooker position. And I think really nothing much lost from Facundo Gaddis not coming back, right? You add a Ben Bonasso and a Semi Kunatani. And I get it. We saw what Semi Kunatani was last year, but that's still a name that if we even see glimpses of what he has done in this league, I think can be very effective. You have now a solid backup who can step into the 10 position in Max Schumacher, right? We saw what happened when Jason Robertson went out.
I don't even want him at 10. That's the thing. I don't want Max Schumacher at 10. I want him at 15. That's where he played best on Houston. That's what he did best. I see what you mean. I understand what you're saying.
Okay, but you can still have that though. You can still have him at 15.
Sure, but yeah, I understand what you're saying. I just think if I'm looking at all the teams, Old Glory DC to me is the third worst team.
Which is fine. But I think in a league where there's six teams, right? I think that separation you're talking about, Maddie, like where, in years past, right? All these other teams are doing great, and what New England, Seattle, Houston had versus that next level tier, those tier breaks to at least to me are any break. Like if Seattle right now with the rosters that we see, right? If like who do you think you would right now think is the best roster
I
in your
told you
mind?
Seattle's going to win.
Okay, so if you think Seattle's going to win, if Seattle is facing Old Glory DC this Sunday, you think Seattle's winning that 10 out of 10 times?
Like, it's the Olympics. Miracle on ice can happen. So yeah, if we face them 10 times, they might win nine. But Herb Brooks
And
said
I
it
think,
best.
I think that's where we differ is that I do think this roster is good enough that I think it's a coin flip in terms
Look,
of that.
I think this team can do what they always do and beat the New England Free Jacks on a cold Massachusetts rainy day in Stokes. But they do that every year. And what happens? They make it to the playoffs and they lose in the first or second round. I mean, the first round in this case.
Okay.
But like, I just don't see it. Like, I just look at it. I look at the side, and the way that I see it is, if I see Anthem getting a win, it's against this team.
Who do you like more? I know there's like they're only I'll maybe it's no, you know what? I'm not going to ask that question. I'm going to wait until we get the full roster to
Don't do
come
it.
out.
Don't even ask anymore
You
because you
know
know
you
what my answer is going to be. It's going to be, I don't know. I don't care until they announce more than 20
Oh.
guys.
Yeah. I understand. I caught myself before we went there. All right. Well, then
But
that's a great.
let's hold on. Let's be positive about this though. I do love a lot of signings here. Like Kunatani, you're right, but Naso, these are guys that have been announced in the past. I love Max Schumacher. I want to see him get playing time. I love the way he plays. Jordan Jackson Hope is a game changer instantly. I'm really excited to see the way he plays in with Jason Emery. I think it'll be really interesting because Jason Emery plays 12. Jordan Jackson Hope is also 12. They're both very similarly ball distributors. So I think it'll be interesting from a fantasy perspective there. But the one guy that I think you can be sure of, I'm going to say three guys in this back line that I think you can be sure of is Connor Buckley. He's going to be a great nine pickup, I think. Jason Robertson is going to be a great halfback, fly half pickup, and Damian Hoyland. I mean, he's yeah, him
So,
last year was just ridiculous. So
okay, so then you say you like Max Schumacher at 15. Damian Hoyland or Schumacher. For me, it's Hoyland easy.
that's yeah, but I can put Hoyland on the wing.
But is that just as effective though, you think?
I mean, I can also put Hoyland at 13.
It's true. You
And
got
and
options. Well,
he's
that's what I'm
and
liking about this DC team
we've
is that
seen him do
you
well.
have a
Yeah,
you
but
have a
every
lot more
every
options than you've
every
had in
team,
years past.
sure, because there's more players to choose from. But
Sure.
from relatively, I don't see it.
Okay. Okay.
I don't
I'm
see
just,
it.
I really like, and I get it to your point, Maddie. I guess it all feeds into like there just being more depth across the league because, yeah, we just got rid of half the teams. But the, what it comes down to, and we'll finish on this note in terms of this Old Glory DC team, the fact that Jason Robertson, God forbid, knock on wood, the injury that happened last year, right? They had a run on Jason Emery basically all season long, right? The fact that now that becomes Max Schumacher instead of Jason Emery is, I think, it speaks at least to either the bar that
You're
has been raised in
accurate.
terms of the quality of talent on all the teams, or at least DC's approach to now have maybe some bigger names that we have been excited to see. Either way, Old Glory DC, Chicago, two teams joining Anthem Rugby Carolina as squads that have now been announced for 2026. We
Yep.
officially now have 50% of the players that we know are going to be suiting up here for the opening week
I mean,
of
honestly, we
MLR.
could probably say New England's basically up there. They have
Yes, I think a
33
lot of this
guys.
is basically done except for one
Yeah.
team. I think
Well,
we
Seattle
we
Seawolves has got a few. They definitely have a
got a
few
few. But
signings
let's
to
go there.
go.
Let's go there. Let's go there with those teams, Maddie, because let's quickly round out the California Legion.
Teams
Signed
round
Taz
out
Smith, scrum
what?
half, obviously RFCLA. Expectation there, he's going to go back up, just like how he did last year, in terms of making sure that that they have options behind Gonzalo Petrano, and that they're going to make sure that that
Sure. Who's he
you know
passing the ball to? Tell me.
Yuri Van
Nobody
Buren, second
knows.
row player, has been a streamable player in the past, but that adds into the mix. So we are now at in our ticker. You can see it. You can have it now run below the screen. We're at a running total of 16 players now total. We got a full starting lineup
Congratulations.
when it comes to the California Legion, except for fly half. We've seen Gonzalo go to 10, so maybe that's what they do. They at least in this makeshift mock 15 that they have, they got one sub ready to go. So then let's go to the Seattle Seawolves, Maddie, who again you mentioned still have also some signings to round out as well. But the most recent announcements being the addition of back three player Michael Hand, who played with the Chicago Hounds, and then
Big boy.
new Italian U.S. eligible winger Matthias Douglas, who then also joins that back three room. To your point, Maddie, Seattle's still at 28 players, 26 of which have officially been confirmed. We're assuming that Brock Gallagher and Karan Van Vuren are both on the Seawolves because we saw them in social media posts. It looks like to get to that 32, 33 number, they're just going to have to round out that second row, back row room, looking at the common numbers around all the teams that have been announced so far. But nonetheless, Michael Hand and Matthias Douglas get them closer to that full squad announcement.
Love to see it. I mean, I like Michael Hand. Again, he's just, I think, depth in a back row room that is absolutely stocked.
Yeah, yeah. That again. The same. I feel like we're kind of a broken record. It's gonna be so interesting this year in terms of figuring out like just the value of holding guys because obviously to me at least right now the starting lineup is one that consists of Devon Rousseau, Duncan Matthews,
I don't know
right?
how you have them both.
That I mean that is true. That is true as well. Because then you got Mark Bennett that's signing. I mean, again, that just encapsulates that I think the headache that this year is going to be in terms of fantasy and making sure that you have the right guys in is going to be if it wasn't a wrench already, an even bigger wrench heading into 2026. All right. Let's get to the point that I think everybody's been waiting to hear about, and that is a historic agreement. I don't want to underplay this because this is a very important episode. An important announcement that this league made last week, and that is the announcement that the Major League Rugby and the United States Rugby Players Association came to an agreement, their first ever collective bargaining agreement in professional American rugby history. And what I want to say about this in a nutshell before we get into the nitty-gritty is, for me, the word that rings true with something like this that comes out is stability, right? I think it's something that we have been discussing for a long, long time. We have been following this league here on the Fantasy Rucker Show for a long, long time. We've dealt with a lot of turmoil, a lot of turnover, a lot of uncertainty. This is the one thing I think in the whole course, Maddie, that I've followed this league and I've been covering this league and we've been creating content about this league that has made me feel the most sure about the future of Major League Rugby and the existence of pro rugby here in North America. It's something that's been a long time coming. Again, it is stability, or I should say, a stable thing that has happened in a very unstable situation that has existed for many, many years, especially this year and this past off season. So again, before we get into the nitty gritty, I just wanted to put that out there because I think if you were to tell me heading into this offseason, you are going to lose five MLR teams. But by the end of all of it, heading into the eighth season of Major League Rugby, right? 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25,
Good
26,
math.
ninth season of Major League Rugby, that we would have a CBA, the first ever. I think, and I don't know if this is a hot take, but I would take that trade in a heartbeat. In a
What are you trading?
heartbeat. If you told me that I had to lose five teams to get a CBA done, I would do that.
I think you're overvaluing the CBA. The CBA doesn't mean that they can't fold.
No, no, but
Doesn't mean that we're not
factors,
going to lose more teams in the future. It just means that
no.
when we do lose teams, there is an agreement to help those players that are on the teams be better managed.
Mm-mm. No, it includes during season two though,
I
right?
understand that. I understand that, but it doesn't mean that there's any less chance of teams not being able to meet the buy-in or not getting the right investors.
Okay,
It,
okay, okay. So then what I say to you then is you think that this means is nothing.
I think it doesn't mean nothing. I don't think you can take it into a I wouldn't trade having five teams and not losing five teams in 9 years, or I don't think it's a huge thing in terms of the continuance of the league. I think the league is going to continue on the trajectory that it is now with CBA or not. I actually think financially this might actually have be another thing for them to think about as they're going through the years. Now, what I do think is the impact is just the fact that current players and also people who are thinking about coming to the MLR, these are the international guys or marquee names that may want to come play rugby in America. They now have more incentive to do so because they're better taken care of. Obviously, those guys are not the guys that the CBA is pointed towards, right? Like those guys are guys that are getting paid under the table already, a lot of money. But I think when you look at these, it makes the MLR a much more attractive route for whether that's even young university players who want to make it, who want to go for it, or young Americans that are just looking to play rugby and want to play professionally. I think that's where the impact is, and it's going to influence guys and maybe like guys that are not as marquee names internationally, and say, hey, the U.S. is a genuine reasonable opportunity, and I'm going to feel supported as a player by the league, that I'm not going to be dropped and left kind of on the side of the road.
The reason why I am so, I guess, optimistic about this is because again, I think if all of what you're saying, Matt, is the only thing that it provided, then I would agree with you, right? Like that I would 100% do that. But where the optimism comes from for me is that there is now a legal framework. Teams now understand a clear-cut line in terms of what is required from them in an agreement with players in the league of what is the minimum for what needs to be right? And if they don't meet those requirements and they don't abide by the CBA, there are legal ramifications that now come out of this, right? So for the instance of Nola folding like the way they did, right? And that the article, as per the Golf Rugby report of them not being offered fair severance fees and things like that, like there would be a lawsuit in place that would happen if that was to happen. So the decision for a team to fold or not and not pay the price in doing so increases, right? And that's why my optimism goes in there because now
Yeah.
instead of a line or a space that has been governed pretty chaotically, if we're to be honest, right? And there being no clear-cut line, and for there to be just kind of this like status quo agreement on what is acceptable and not acceptable, this now offers that clarity, right, of what is
So
right and what is wrong, right? So that's the
sure.
reason why I'm a little bit
I
more
I
confident in
mean,
it.
hey, I'm all for better support when teams fold. It's
Yeah,
not going to stop teams from folding.
I guess we'll
It's
see.
not a team is not going to look at say, wow, I got to pay all these severance checks. I'm going to pull some money out of some random investor that I don't have in order to make the cut and not fold. It's they still need the money. At the end of the day, they still need the
Well,
money.
but what
So,
I'm saying is that there's going to be like lawsuits involved though with that though. It's not like they can just say, "Oh, we don't have the money, we can't pay that."
well, sure, but if they can't even pay the severance, how are they going to stay in the league? So it's like if you're at
Well,
that
no,
point
no,
as a
no.
team,
I'm not saying that, right? I'm saying it's before that, right? It deters a team from making that decision in the first
no,
place.
if they can't get money right, if they can't meet the buy-in, they can't meet the buy-in. It's not a decision anymore that they have to make. They're not going to be able to do it.
I think that's where
That's
we
it. That's it. If they can't, like a CBA is not going to, the fact that there's legal ramification is not going to prevent me from, basically how I'm taking it, right, is that you're saying that because of these legal ramifications, they're going to try harder to get investors like they haven't already been trying.
no, no, that is not what I'm saying. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that these investors that we're talking about, right? They when they fold, it's not that they have zero money in the bank. These owners don't aren't going bankrupt because of MLR, right? They are pulling out of MLR because they're losing too much money, right? And they're saying, I don't have the money to fund this team. If I'm going to drop out of this league, for me to do that, I need to pay these severance fees that are league on a legal obligation that has been agreed to. So for me to pull out, it is now a bigger cost for me to do so. They that still might happen. You're absolutely correct, Maddie. But now there are things in place where something like what happened to Nola cannot happen in the future, right? And hopefully will deter teams from being able to take the decision of folding and not folding as lightly as it has been in the past.
Yeah, love that. But regardless, honestly, these things are like reasonable, not even reasonable. I would say these are like given things that I think as a player, you're really happy to know that it's guaranteed through a legal agreement.
Yeah, well, and let's break some of those things down though there, Maddie. So, there's been all great coverage when it comes to this, right? North American Rugby Database by James Dealey has a great write-up on that. We'll have that link down below. There was the initial report from Alex Goff of Goff Rugby Report, who released more information about this. Again, what he said was in whole, the CBA provides every MLR player with increased salaries alongside several other new rights, protections, including rights for injured players, free agents, health and safety protections, establishment of clear discipline policy, et cetera, et cetera. And then following that, the USRPA comes out with their own statement with some more specifics in there. And some of the things in there are, like Maddie mentioned, some economic things when it means to, additional $2,000 payment for every player in the league right now, minimum weekly compensation, housing, free agency, rights for players under contract, a whole bunch of things that CBAs would outline. Health and safety is a big one as well. And then of course the grievance procedures like we mentioned. What I will say though, Maddie, and whether or not
Mhm.
we differ on the impact that this has, there is a reason why every single professional sports team or professional sports league has a CBA. And I just think to be taken seriously, the steps and the work that has gone in for the MLR and the USRPA to actually sit down and have a real discussion, right, is just a big, big step in my eyes to getting to an established league here in North America. And whether or not you think that teams are going to fold, teams are going to be added, and there's going to be this flux, I think that happens with every new sport, right, in this North American sports landscape. But what, again, a CBA does is just it adds that legitimacy, it adds that, um, you know, like I mentioned, stability in a league that has been very unstable. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this may ripple effect into what the future holds for MLR and what players think about this league and everything that comes along with that.
Yep, I'm all for it.
All right. Well, hey, check it out again. Awesome. I think again, huge, huge, huge announcement again and an agreement between Major League Rugby and the US Rugby Players Association. I just want to add this note as well because this is something that I think has been a little unclear for a lot of people because again, this is the USRPA and within that USRPA there is a MLRPA which is a unit of the USRPA. And in the negotiations, you may think because it's USRPA, only US players are being represented in that sense and are as a part of this discussion. But it was confirmed that 20 plus players that involved Eagles, Canadians, internationals, and other leaders in that space were part of this negotiation. So the MLR is obviously has been emphasizing the growth and development of North American talent, specifically U.S. talent. But that doesn't mean that some of the international names and representation wasn't there when they were hashing this out. So again, I guess I'm a little bit more optimistic than maybe most people, but again, I think this is a big step forward into establishing itself into the North American pro sports space. 2-year agreement. We'll see what happens here at the end of 2 years. And again, to your point, Maddie, with the economic uncertainty, there is a clause in there that after 2026, if something happens where they're not getting the revenue that they need, or maybe fingers crossed are getting more revenue, there's a chance to step out here and figure out what's the best steps here moving forward. So that is some good stuff. All right, Maddie, I know you have some insiders out there in California, but are there any other news that you need to talk about before we move on here?
I don't think so. Not this time.
All right, let's get into a Commissioner Yee's league update.
We don't need this.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye.
All right, hear ye, hear ye. Here is Supreme Commissioner Yee with a Fantasy Ruckers League update. We're just over, I would say, a little over a month away from the start of the Fantasy MLR season. The question that we've been hearing a lot of is how do I play Fantasy MLR this upcoming year? And you're going to find out how to do that very, very soon. There is going to be our questionnaire and sign-up form that does come out here each and every year for you to get involved. We will be posting that if it is not posted already to get signed up here for MLR 2026. So keep an eye out for that. And you will be put on the list of people who will be participating. Again, because of the change in format from the MLR, it inherently means that there's going to be a change in format when it comes to our TFR leagues. So those will be also announced coming up here. And like I said, there is going to be a whole bunch of stuff coming out here in the coming weeks, rankings that we'll be talking about here on this show. We're going to come out with our draft kit again that a lot of people, I think, had a lot of fun using last year during their drafts. And we'll make sure that comes out. And hey, start asking us questions. Like if you're curious, if you've done it before and you want to know, certain things about the upcoming season, or if you're brand new and just want to learn about how Fantasy MLR works, leave us a comment down below. Join that Discord and start asking people. We have a whole bunch of people in there that love to chat rugby and help point you in the right direction. So that being said, again, sign up form. It's that time of the year. Let's get ready here for Fantasy MLR 2026. All right, Maddie. In addition to getting ready for the Fantasy MLR season, we also got to get our chops ready for a little bit of betting here for the upcoming MLR year. And it's great that Super Rugby has just started, which I know you have a lot of fun doing, to talk a little bit about some betting challenges.
TFR Betting Challenge.
All right, it's time for the TFR Betting Challenge. This is the part of the show where we typically will talk about the upcoming MLR matches and the lines and what we are thinking to hopefully make some money here on Major League Rugby. And as we are about, again, over a month away from the start of the MLR season, let's get the rugby betting chops warmed up here a little bit with one of Maddie's favorite
I
leagues, and
think
that
I
is
did pretty
Super
good
Rugby.
last week.
Did
Well, I
you?
was gonna say I think I did pretty good with Six Nations last week. I thought so. I thought I called the Scotland covering.
Yes.
I thought I called France definitely winning by a lot.
Yes.
And I feel like I called the Italy cover as well.
You did as well. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. Let's see if that
I
continues this
Are
week.
you just
You
saying
want,
that, or do you actually know that that's what I said? I don't
I
remember.
am almost certain that is what you said. I do not have the numbers on me.
I feel pretty confident. I feel pretty confident. But let's go back to
Check
Super
the
Rugby,
tapes.
Ryan.
Check the tapes. We'll ask our
Do
viewers
we
and
have
listeners, check the tapes there. See if Matthew, how well he did last one. So we're gonna
do we
see if
got
he
the
can continue that
lines?
hot streak here. What do you want to start with? Super Rugby Six Nations.
Super Rugby. Let's do well, do we have the line for Super Rugby?
We do. We do.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right, let's fly through them. All right. We start on Friday. Moana Pacifica at the Hurricanes. Matt, what are you thinking?
I mean, I have to go with my boys, but I feel like this line, the lines aren't as big here. I like Moana just coming off a big win against Drua. Moana actually has a great lineup. I think they're probably dogs by, let's say, 10 and a half.
Oh, pretty close. 12 and a half. Moana Pacifica
Yeah.
are dogs.
I like them covering.
Okay.
Moana is the team that is going to be like the Drua of last year. Moana, I like them covering. I still hope the boys up the Canes get the win.
All right. There we go. I'm assuming you don't want to bother with over-unders.
No, let's not bother with these over-unders.
Okay.
That's the coward's way out.
Coming up
Let's
on at a couple
uh,
hours after that, we got Fiji and Drua versus the Waratahs.
Yeah, I mean, I think Waratahs are definitely favorites here. I think Drew is probably dogs by 15 and a half,
11.
11 and a half, so even closer.
Just 11.
Again, just that's weird. But I don't I like Drew.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the dogs here. I like Drew.
All right. Chiefs at Highlanders.
Oof, Highlanders coming off a big win against the Crusaders. The Chiefs coming up a big win against the Blues. This one's going to be an absolute barn burner. Where is it, Ryan? Do you know?
At Highlanders.
Ooh, okay. Forsyth Bar under the roof in the zoo. Um, Chiefs are probably the favorites here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chiefs are probably favored by, let's say, 4.5.
8.5.
Oh, that's crazy. Highlanders cover.
Okay,
Highlanders
Highlanders
cover.
cover. The
Yeah.
first you love your covering. You love covering.
I just think the lines they put out at 8.5, that's too much.
I would
That's
be
too
very
much.
curious.
That's too
I should
much.
All right, I got to track these because I want to see how many times you hit
You
on
should
these
track, you should
covering
track, you should
losses.
track once we start the MLR season, you should track it. I agree.
Oh, 100%. 100. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
Of course. Of course. Of course. All right.
Um,
Blues at Western Force.
yeah, Blues, what? They're favored by probably 15 and a half.
9.5.
Wow. Yeah, I think Blues can cover that.
Okay. And then lastly, Brumbies at Crusaders.
Crusaders, I'm gonna favored by 3.5, maybe.
Favored by 8.5.
That's crazy. Yeah, I don't know about that, but I'd stay away from that one, honestly.
Okay.
But
All
I
right.
think my
Is
favorite, I
there
think my
any of
favorite
those
one,
ones?
my
So
favorite one is
between
Moana Pacifica, and I think the Chiefs being favored with how much I'm actually going to say the Blues covering that 8.5. I think that's not
the
enough points for them.
9.5.
Nine and a half.
Blues?
Yeah,
Or you mean
yeah. The
Chiefs?
Blues. No, the Blues.
Okay. You think that 9.5 is too much for them to, or is not enough for
It's not
Western
enough.
Force?
I don't think it's
Okay.
enough.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So
think the
then I'll
Blues
ask
can.
you in those covering spreads that you talked about, Maddie, is there any that you'd be confident enough to outright win? Is there
I
any
think
way Moana Pacific?
Highlanders. I think Moana Pacifica could. I think you have a
Okay.
higher chance picking the Highlanders to cover and
Okay.
win.
Moana Pacifica at plus 360 for the outright win. Highlanders plus 255.
If I had to choose, I would take the Moana to cover, and I'd take the Highlanders to win. If you could only
Okay.
choose one like that,
Okay.
that's how
All
I would
right.
do it.
All right. All right. Quickly here, Matt. Six Nations. We got Ireland at England.
Oof,
Uh, I'm just gonna give you the
that's
spreads here. 11
why.
and a half. England
What
is
the heck?
favored.
That's wow. Wow. 11 and a half. Yeah, Ireland
11 and a
covers
half.
that. Ireland covers that any day of the week.
Okay.
Scotland, what? Favored by 19 and a half.
20 and a half.
Yeah, it's pretty close. I mean, I think they do it. I wouldn't pick this line. I wouldn't. Don't touch that game. Anything can happen in that one.
Okay.
And then what? France, Italy. France probably favored by, if that's 20 and a half, let's say 17 and a half.
31 and a half.
No, 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 no. Italy covers. Italy covers. Italy's Italy covers. I don't understand how you can give them 30 points. They didn't even beat. No, no, no. They didn't even. No, I don't see it. I
I
don't
think I
see it.
gotta come up with a swing here, Maddie. When in doubt, underdog covers.
No,
Underdog
if
covers
look,
when it comes.
look, unless it's absolutely brutal. Like this is international test rugby. We're not like Italy's better than Wales, and France beat Wales by what 42, and Italy just came off losing to Ireland by 7 and beating Scotland by 3. I don't get that line. I like that. That almost feels like it's cheating. I feel like there's something I'm missing here.
Okay. All righty. Any chance that you take the line? Probably the juiciest one is Ireland at plus 475 for the outright win.
No, I wouldn't
That
take him for the outright win.
okay. All right.
But
All right.
I like them covering that spread because that
All
spread
right.
is a little bit too big for me.
All right. Well, hey, that is a early taste again. The past few weeks of TFR Betting Challenge, dabbling in some other leagues around the world. But again, in just over a month's time away, the MLR TFR Betting Challenge will begin. Maddie, myself, Vandy, you try to use the advice of Maddie to go head to head here to see who can make some more money here in this MLR 2026 year. All right. Well, hey, CBA, 50% of the teams announced here for MLR 2026, or I should say finalized for 2026, plus some incoming and ongoing signings that are happening. Maddie, they're looking pretty good. And I mean, in no time, we're probably going to be having jersey
Look,
releases soon. We're going to be having, some
if we can
other
have
teams
all the
announced.
teams announced in 2 weeks' time, I think we'll be in a good space.
Okay. All right. There we go. And then again, from a TFR side of things, rankings coming out in these next couple episodes. We're going to be giving you no shortage of fantasy MLR content, along with how you can get involved in fantasy MLR here this 2026 season. Sign
Yes,
up
sir.
page coming out soon, along with a whole bunch of other stuff as well. Maddie, you have anything else you want to say to the people? Anything you want to say to Vandy? It was Family
Yeah,
Day in
just
Canada for
happy
him.
Family Day. I mean, Family Day is cool, but here it was George Washington's birthday.
President's Day is cooler.
I'm just saying we got a picture, a painting. I was talking with some people at work, right? The Renaissance painting of George Washington on the front of a boat crossing the Delaware River. Um, that is something to be celebrated. But you know what's even more important than war? Family. And that's what Canada's celebrating today, and I love to see it. So yeah, I guess we'll do the showdown of holidays when they ultimately meet in the finals of the Olympic hockey event.
Oh, there we go.
So we'll see from there. But yeah, all in all, happy birthday, George, and happy Family Day, and happy whatever else day for anybody else elsewhere. I
I
don't
don't
know how
think there's
many
any other
international
better way
viewers
to
we
finish
got,
it
but
off. Finish it off myself. Enjoy, yeah, Olympics, all that good stuff. And it just helps
I
us
guess we'll
keep
be one
trudging
day
along.
removed from this. So it's like happy belated
Yes, exactly.
George
So
Washington birthday.
on top of all that, again, just helping us speed up that time for the start of MLR 2026. For Matt
Yes,
Yee,
sir.
for Devin Vandy Vanderpool, I am Ryan Yee, and we'll see you next week on another episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
The Redcoats are coming.
You've been listening to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, covering everything rugby from the MLR and beyond. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and be sure to tell all your friends. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, connect with us on social media at the Fantasy Ruckers. Till next time, this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show, signing off.